The next thing I want to quickly go over is one of the questions that was one of our discussion board questions last week, which dealt with interviewing behind a desk. Saw a lot of different answers, so I thought we might take some time to talk about this, because in this class, as well as the online section, I saw a lot of people that said that they didn't see anything wrong with interviewing behind a desk. So I thought that we should kind of pause and talk about this. Does anybody see why you should not interview behind a desk? Does anybody have any idea?
I don't understand, like, what do you mean behind a desk?
Like a typical,
your office?
In an office setting, a typical office setting, the interviewee may come in and you'll be on one side of the desk and they'll be on the other side of the desk.
I've had an interview like that before.
Doesn't mean it's right though, right?
I think it's more intimidating.
It's intimidating.
Yeah.
What else?
You don't feel as comfortable as to open up a little bit more.
Right.
You feel like you have to maintain a certain mentality when you walk in.
Right.
You know, if I have more than one people interviewing, I think that's getting more nervous than just one person behind a desk. That's that's personal opinion.
So you're saying that
if I have more than one, you know, one big room, if I come in a big room and I see more than one, instead of one little office and one person, I feel more comfortable with just one person behind the desk than.
True enough. I think that as time goes on, though, you have to kind of get more used to group interviews, because a lot of people are doing that nowadays. The traditional one-on-one interviews aren't as popular as they used to be. So that's something you're going to have to face. But I see a point. You know, there's different levels of intimidation that one can have. But specifically, if we stay on talking about behind a desk, you're right. A person may feel intimidated. What about body language? You can't see the body language as well as you can if you're interviewing in a different type of setting versus if you're behind a desk. This person could be very fidgety, but you can't see because they're behind the desk.
And then Phoebe will be doing this.
Yeah.
But you can't.
Right. The desk can also create a barrier. It kind of creates a barrier between the two people. So there's a lot of things that I kind of see I have issues with interviewing behind a desk. I actually think a conference room is more suitable for an interview, even if it's just two people. That way, maybe you guys can sit kind of side to side, like you have one person sitting at the head of the table and then the interview person to the right or the left, or even across from each other. But it's not as formal per se as that traditional office behind a desk. So I just wanted to kind of talk about that and clear that up, because I did see a lot of people that said, oh, I don't really see anything wrong with interviewing behind a desk. And I get it, because that's probably the way that most of us have interviewed over the years, and so it just feels natural to us, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everything that we've done over the years, the way that we've done it, is the right way. So keep that in mind when you have to interview people. Try to choose a good location rather than try to get out of the office. Try to see if you can interview with them somewhere else. I've seen people interview with people in the cafeteria, believe it or not. I haven't done that personally, but working in the hospital, I have seen people interview in the cafeteria before during an off time where there's not that many people in there. So, you know, kind of get creative with it to see where else besides the traditional office where you might be able to interview somebody.
I've had an interview, it wasn't in healthcare, but I've had an interview in the food court at the mall.
Right.
So that's like professional. That's not.
I think that it's going to depend on where you're working, what type of environment it is. If you're working somewhere in the mall, it kind of makes sense to me. They just try to choose an open location that wasn't too private, that wasn't too intimidating. Now, if you're going to work in, you know, a huge high-rise building and they're taking you to the mall food court, I'd kind of question that. But even if they took you to the food court in their building, you know, again, that person may have just been trying to get you out of the office, or maybe their office is too small, or you never know why they take you wherever they do to interview you. So I don't necessarily have a problem with that, as long as it wasn't too loud, noisy.
But I was eating.
What kind of job was it for?
It was a clothing store.
In the mall.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I'm okay with that. They may not have offices. I mean, you know, some of the stores aren't that big.
Well, it was small in that store, so.
Yeah. So they may not have that space to have one in the actual store. Any other comments about interviewing behind a desk? Today, We're going to cover chapters 13 and 11, leadership and management, and team leadership. So, we think about how organizational culture and leadership relate to each other. Each organization is going to have their own culture, and a lot of that kind of falls on the leader. The leader will typically set the tone for the organization, what type of culture they're going to have, if it's going to be laid back or very tightly run. So it's important that leaders keep this in mind when they're, the way they're behaving, the way that they're speaking. All that kind of falls back on the leader as regards to how they shape the organizational culture. So let's talk a little bit about different leadership styles. And there's a number of them, so if you want to take notes on this, that might be helpful because there's a lot of them. The first one we're going to talk about is the authoritarian leadership. This is a very traditional type of leadership. Typically, it's kind of like, I'm a leader, this is what I say do, this is what you do. A very black and white, as it says, task-oriented, paternalistic, or autocratic. The next type of leadership is participative. Can anybody guess what that means? Right. This is going to be your leaders who don't necessarily make all the decisions on their own. They're going to bring in other people from either their colleagues or even people that report to them, but they're going to bring in, it's more of a team style approach where you all work together to make decisions and do your planning. Also known as Theory Y. Then you have Theory Z leadership. You guys may have heard of this for those of you who have already taken management. It's also called Japanese management, and it focuses on productivity, meaning employee input and outputs, and it focuses a lot on quality. An example of a company that uses this is Toyota. They're very involved with quality products and productivity of their employees. So this is the type of leadership that they fall under. It's Theory Z. So you have bureaucratic leadership, another traditional, very popular leadership style, and it's very by the book. There has to be a rule for everything. So a leader, a bureaucratic leader, maybe if someone were to come to them and say, well, what do we do in this situation? Their first answer would probably be look in your policies and procedure manual. They're very by the book, not very outside the box. It's kind of whatever is written, that's how it goes.
And that's bad?
Not necessarily. You tell me.
I don't know.
That's not necessarily bad. It might be bad. Why might it be bad?
It's not every situation is going to fall under those.
Every situation might not be the same. What else? Doesn't necessarily emphasize or encourage creativity. If you're a leader that is very by the book, that's going to kind of trickle down to your employees, and they're probably not going to be as engaged or motivated to be creative or think outside of the box. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. There's some great leaders that, are bureaucratic. It works for them. I think some of it depends on your industry, and with healthcare, this may not work necessarily as well because things are always changing and every day is different. So it kind of just depends. I'm not saying that this is a bad leadership style. It may work. It may work in some situations. It may not. It's important to know when or why it might not work, though. So we have situational leadership. As you can guess, this is the type of leadership that will change depending on the situation. Typically works well for the healthcare environment. It's all about adaptation with that one. All right, next we have the Laissez-Faire Leadership style. This one can be tricky because it's minimal micromanaging, it's very hands-off, it's very nonchalant, lackadaisical type leadership, which might work for someone who's a high producer, very independent, can pretty much work on their own, but for employees or subordinates that need that hands-on leadership, this may not work well. So we'll talk about a few different types of variations. You have manipulation. Does that work? No? Yes? Management by crisis. I actually, unfortunately, find that happens a lot in healthcare, unfortunately. You have management by exception, management by objectives, and management by wandering around. Contemporary leadership activities might involve team building, and this is contemporary, so this means that this may not be activities that have typically happened in the past, but now these are some of the activities you see leaders participating in. So we have team building. You're seeing that some companies nowadays actually have outings where they will take, do ropes course or something like that with their employees, and all that's to promote team building. Cross-training, which allows for your employees to be more flexible if somebody is out of the office or sick. Employee empowerment, improved quality of customer service. A lot of people are focusing more on customer service now just because customers have more power now. They have more access to information, there's more transparency, so they're able to kind of leverage a little bit more, and because of that, it's forcing companies to provide better customer service to remain competitive in the market. Cost cutting, again, that's as a result of increased competition. Managing change, staff reductions, decentralizing activities, and worker safety and health programs. So we're going to talk a little bit about what makes a team leader effective, because we can have ineffective team leaders as well. So we'll start here with an effective team leader is somebody who obviously is professional. Have you ever seen a team leader who, and we can include class teams, that was not professional? And think about how that affected your team and your productivity and how organized you were. It definitely makes a difference. Effective team leaders are somebody that people can look up to, that they respect, that they can trust, depend on to get the job done. An effective team leader is somebody that people want to get their advice and their opinion. You may have some team leaders or some leaders where you don't want to know what their opinion is. You could care less what they think or how they think because you don't value their insight. Typically, they're asked to serve on important committees in their organizations. They can usually answer most questions that you have. If not, they can probably get that answer fairly quickly if it's an effective team leader. And they tend to cooperate with their team and their counterparts. You may have some leaders that are just that. They don't want to cooperate with anybody. They don't want to work with anybody else. They just want to lead. That's not necessarily being effective. They're emotionally stable. Let's talk about that. Because working with teams is stressful. Yes? So an effective team leader will be relaxed and won't be stressed out. Typically the leader is the one that has to calm everybody else down when they get frazzled or stressed out. So they're able to remain calm under pressure, which most teams will have at some point. They handle stress well, and everybody's human. So everybody gets upset sometimes. So in the event that that leader does get upset, they try to focus on the behavior and not necessarily personality, which is a great characteristic to have because I think a lot of people tend to do the opposite. So effective team leaders get the job done. You have a great leader, but they may not be productive. I've seen it. I've had it. Great leaders, not organized, so nothing ever gets done. But because they're such a great leader and they're charismatic and people love them and they respect them, they never get fired or they never get taken out of their position. So an effective team leader gets the job done. And how do they do that? They provide a sense of direction. They tell you up front what their expectations are, and those are usually high expectations. They tell you, you know, you have to do X, Y, and Z, and you're going to do it this way, and this is why we need to have it done this way. They're organized and always prepared. They usually work ahead, proactive, don't wait to the last minute, and they focus on the things that matter the most. Have you ever had a leader or a team leader or a group leader that focuses on things that are so trivial, so small, that in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter? Like, for instance, if you're working on a team project and somebody's adamant on making the presentation purple, does that really matter in the grand scheme of things? Does the color of a PowerPoint matter?
No.
So an effective team leader is not going to focus on something like that. They're going to focus on the overall product. That's what matters. Is the assignment done? Is it done correctly? Have you followed the directions? Who cares what color it is? All right, to continue, they put the right people in the right place. A good, effective leader will identify strengths and weaknesses, and as a result, they'll be able to say, you know, Mary, you do this portion of the report because you're good at X, Y, Z. You know, Michelle, you do this portion because you're good at that. And that's how they're able to get the job done, because they're able to assign people to where they need to be. An effective team leader, you know, we just talked about people not being creative and going by the books. Well, here it says an effective team leader, you know, encourages folks to be innovative and creative, and they invite ideas for people to collaborate to try to get the job done. So effective communicators. How well can you work in a group if no one's communicating? It's hard, right? You know how many emails I get? Dr. Haynes, so-and-so won't answer my emails. How are we going to get our group project done? It's very important, right? You have to communicate. So an effective leader is an effective communicator. They share the information. They don't gossip. They kind of stay on track. They're effective teachers. So they're able to educate the other people in their group, whatever it may be, whether it be, you know, we should do it this way, or actually I found this information, let me share it with you. I think it'll be good for our project. They provide, and I think they welcome feedback. It kind of goes both ways. They allow it to go both ways, because you may have some team members that say, you know what, we should do it this way. But if the leader isn't open to receiving feedback as well, then issues could arise. So they use memos and meetings to communicate. Again, I've seen, you know, some of you all, do pretty well that you're communicating with your team projects, and, you know, you do like an email chain or a phone call group or something like that. So I think that it's important that you're able to find what channels work best for you and your group, and an effective leader will do that. They provide clear instructions to make sure everything's been done and make sure everybody's on the same page. A lot of times I see groups that don't seem to be on the same page. It's probably because there was a communication lapse somewhere. And they're excellent listeners. What about acknowledging our own mistakes? Effective team leaders do that, right? I was wrong, guys, sorry. Or, you know, I said we should do it this way, and I realized this is the better way to do it. They always seem to know what's going on, so that means they always have a pulse on the team progress and what's going on. Even if they aren't intimately involved in that portion, they still know collectively how the group is doing. And they thrive on responsibility. Some people love to be responsible. People love to have that on their shoulders. Some people run away from it. Well, an effective team leader is one that thrives on responsibilities. Credibility. How good is it to have a credible leader? Somebody that has proven in the past that they can get the job done. People know when you say that person's name, people know who they are, what it means, what type of product they're going to bring to the table. There's some people you already know once you say the name that whatever they produce is going to be good. So that's an effective team leader. And how do they do that? They keep their promises. They follow through on their commitments. They say they're going to do something by this date. you can expect to have it by that date and that it's going to be a good product. They don't take credit for other people's ideas. How often does this happen? You have this great idea and your team leader's like, well, I actually came up with this idea, and you're like, I totally got robbed. It happens all the time, right? I'm sure it's happened to all of us at least once. But a good leader won't do this. They'll give credit where it's due, and they don't play favorites. So we've talked a lot about effective team leaders and what they do, but let's talk about what they produce, what they develop. They also develop good followers. And how they do that, they have to engage them and create a relationship with them and build a rapport. And the way they do that is they show them that they care. You know, this kind of goes back to when we were talking about emotional intelligence, having empathy for the people you work with. And the way that you do that is you pitch in, you roll up your sleeves, you help out, you show them that you're just like them, you're human, you're not above them. You give them responsibility so they feel empowered. And give them a little bit of freedom. It's okay to have reins, but you don't want to have the reins too tight to the point where people are afraid to move in any direction. You want to give them a certain level of freedom so that you're letting them know that just like they trust you and they depend on you, you depend on them and you trust them as well to get the job done. Let's talk about rewards and how to develop committed followers through rewards. Have you ever gotten rewarded in a way that made you really admire your leader? Any good examples?
Mine was a vacation.
You got a vacation?
Got a vacation.
Where? Who gets a vacation? I'm thinking it's gonna be like a Snicker bar or something. You got a vacation? Tell us about it. She said it all modest, like, yeah, I got a vacation.
like she got something better than that. Oh, it's just a vacation.
In other words, I was able to get the days off, and people that I worked for, they had some facility, and I was able to, go there. So I was able to get all that.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was nice.
Can't top that example. Very good example. They also defend people. There's been situations where I've seen leaders kind of go to bat for their team members or their employees, and that would definitely develop somebody into being committed to following you, if nothing else does. They exhibit charisma. You guys know what charisma is? Can anybody give me an example of a charismatic leader that you know? Everybody should know one.
Yeah.
The one I'm thinking of.
President Obama.
Yes. He's a very charismatic leader, President Obama. If you look at this list and you think about him, he'll probably match up to most of these. It says they maintain a childlike fascination. Have you ever seen him playing with kids or babies, and they catch the pictures of him? They make it a point to catch people doing something right and tell them so. They hold a warm handshake and smile. He's always smiling, or they always catch him smiling. They use the other person's name often. They project energy and enthusiasm, and they're good role models. So that was a good example. So mistakes, they're gonna happen. We're gonna make them. We have made them. It's important to realize that when you're in charge, especially when you're new at being in charge, you're going to make mistakes. You're probably gonna make a lot of mistakes. It's kind of a part of the process of learning. So it's important to keep that in mind. But the most important thing to keep in mind is that you have to make sure you turn those mistakes into learning experiences. And if you do that, then that's how you'll develop into being what we just talked about, which is an effective leader. So now we're going to get into team leadership. We'll talk about a few different types. We have special purpose, departmental, and what we call the greater team. So special purpose team. Obviously, this is a team that is gathered together for a special purpose. Let me give you an example. I worked in a hospital and the surgery department was having a lot of issues with start times. Do you guys know what start times are? It's just what it says. It's the time that they start surgeries every day. And it's very important that you stay on time for your start times, or you start on time, because if you don't, it's kind of a domino effect, and if you start late, every surgery after that's going to be late, and it just totally throws off your whole day. So we created a special purpose team to investigate or look into the OR department and why they were having late start times. So a special purpose team is a team that's put together for a special project or a certain project or task. When they reach the goal, whatever the goal may be, then the team basically dissolves. So it's kind of a temporary team that's put together for a certain period of time or a certain purpose, and after that, everybody kind of goes back to wherever they were before. The membership of special teams obviously might change depending on what the purpose of the group is or what the task or the project is. And typically, when you put together a special purpose team, this isn't your only job. You're still, you know, if you're a nurse and you're put on this special purpose team, you don't stop being a nurse. You still have to provide services to the patients as well as do whatever your duties may be on this special purpose team. So we have a departmental team. That one's just as it says as well. This is typically a team or a group within a department, and it will typically have a manager or a supervisor in the team who they report to. This was pretty basic. Most floors in the hospital or department will have a departmental team, or several, depending on how large the group is. So we had a greater team, and I want to talk a little bit about this one. Anybody have an idea or an example of what the greater team might be? If we're in a hospital, and we take my example that I was just talking about, and we have our special purpose team, which was our OR start time team, and then we have our departmental team, which might be the surgery department. Well, the greater team might be everybody working in that hospital. It's basically the greater team. So the bigger team is everybody involved in providing patient care. So it's on a larger scheme of things. So we have a project team or an employee team. This is kind of similar to a special purpose team, because they also may take on a specific task or a group. Anybody think of any differences between a special purpose or a project team? Special purpose team might be the team that we put together to figure out why the OR was having late starts. The project team, and let's say we determined through the special purpose team that the reason why we were having late starts was because the doctors were not coming in on time. The project team might be a team that's formed to implement what that change needs to be, whether that be, you know, calling the doctors earlier to make sure they're on time. But the project team is the team that implements a certain task, whereas a special purpose team may be planning, organizing. Project team is more about action. So what's the benefits of teams? We obviously know teams have tons of benefits. We see them all the time in healthcare. Here are a few. You have a group of knowledgeable people, so obviously you're going to have greater expertise than if you're doing something alone. And it all goes back to the term synergy, which I'm sure you all have heard about, the sum of the whole being greater than the sum of its parts. So what that means is when people work together, the product, if they're productive, will be greater than if people are working on the same thing individually. Improve morale. Why does this happen? Typically because when you work in teams with people, you get to know people better. You feel more comfortable at work. You're able to build relationships, improve rapport among each other, which leads to Improve personnel retention. What are some disadvantages to teams? Sometimes people will create teams and they're not necessary. People will just create teams to create teams, just to say they have a team. What that does is sometimes it wastes time. If you're creating teams and you're having all these meetings, I've gone through it before. We have a meeting for this team and a meeting for this team, and what you're doing is wasting time. You're wasting resources. You're paying these people, salary or whatever to do work, and there are all these team meetings. You're wasting a lot of resources. Team building requires some time. People will create teams because there's a problem or an issue, but sometimes we'll forget that it takes time for people to warm up to people and to get to know them and to realize who is strong in this area. All that takes time. Sometimes, especially in healthcare, you don't have time to waste. When fast action is required, somebody has to take charge. Again, we're thinking about healthcare. A lot of things are very fast-paced. May not always have time to decide, all right, who's going to be the leader? All right, who's going to do this? Sometimes you just need someone to take it over. This may not always happen that easily in a team. And as a result of what we just talked about, with those disadvantages, sometimes we have some failures. These are a few of the common reasons why teams fail. Lack of organizational support. Internal politics. Hidden agendas. How often does that happen? Sometimes we have cliques within the teams. People are buddy-buddy and don't want to work with anybody else. They only want to work with this one person. Competition. Everybody wants to shine in the team instead of just working together and coming up with a good product. Lack of progress, unrealistic expectations, disapproval of a team's output. Have you ever had a team and you went through the project and you got to the end and you were unhappy with the product? I've seen it, I've heard it. It happens. So, how can we identify what the different stages in teams are so that we can try to avoid that failure? But we need to understand that stage one is going to be confusing. When you first get together with people, you're not necessarily going to know what's going on. You're not going to know who these people are. It's going to be a little bit of confusion at first. So that's stage one. Stage two is satisfaction. There's probably going to be some stuff you're unhappy about. You want that person to lead the team? You want us to do this? There's going to be some stuff you're not happy about. You may not be happy about the task that you've been given to work on. So stage three. Eventually, you got to get over that dissatisfaction and confusion and get to resolution. Hopefully by this stage, everybody is comfortable in their shoes, in their responsibilities that they have to do as team member. And stage four is maturation. Hopefully by that time, the team has matured, they've learned to work together, they've built some relationships, they've discovered the strengths of everybody, and so we're able to succeed. So team leadership. Very important to have a good team leader. And it's their job to make sure that the team is just not wasting time or resources, being effective and productive. And you need to make sure that your team leader is very customer oriented. Even if the project has nothing to do with customer service, as leader, your customers in a sense are your team members. So you have to be very customer oriented, very approachable, willing to work with others as well as lead them. So let's talk about a leadership style. What type of leadership style do you think is most ideal in a team building situation? We just talked about a few at the beginning of the class. Participative, that's a good one, definitely. Kind of roll up your sleeves. I'm gonna get in and help you guys. Any others?
Authoritative leadership.
What's up?
The Z,
Oh, Theory Z?
Yeah.
Okay, that might work. It works for Toyota.
Yeah.
Focusing on quality and inputs and outputs. Any others? Those two are good, I think. And I think some of it's going to depend on what the project is or what the goal is for the team to accomplish. So the inherited team, this will happen to most of you, if not all of you. There will be a situation where you have to take over a team. You don't know anybody on the team, you don't know what they were doing, but for whatever reason, their leader left or is unavailable, so you have to take it over. This kind of puts you at a disadvantage for a few reasons. One, you may not know who these team members are. You had no input in putting the team together and selecting who the people should be on the team. So in that situation, it's very important up front to get to know the team members immediately, to try to build that rapport, because coming into a situation is going to be hard to be effective and productive if you haven't gotten to know the team members. But I made this a slide because this will happen, you know, especially if you all are in management positions. There'll be times where you will have to take over teams that may not have initially been yours, but as manager, you will probably have no choice but to take it over. They'll be looking to you for leadership. And I think we'll stop there. We're about out of time.